Hello all my JavaScript friends, this is TheVirtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and this is our racing game. Well, it's time that we're finally going to get to how to do all the graphics in the game. First of all, though, I want to show you what we're going to be looking at. Now, I've got it to the point where everything seems to be running. There is one big glaring issue I still haven't figured out yet, and we may spend our very last video in trying to figure that part out, but I'll let you know at the very end of the video of what that looks like and what that's going to be. Otherwise, let's take a quick look to see what the game looks like at this point, and then that will allow us to be able to then go through the graphics. So let's get started. Well, this is the first screen as we're all completely aware of, and if we click on select cars, notice now I have the actual models of the cars. We can go over to our JavaScript file, and we can see our JSON. Our car's JSON file right now takes, has the ID name description, but all the thumbnails and all the models have been changed. Now, as you will find out here shortly, the models are not being loaded in yet because for some strange reason I can't get the models working correctly with the wheels and the chassis, as I'll explain a little bit later. So although you see pictures of the models here, you do not see the models themselves when we get to the actual game, but that's another story. So let's select our cars. We got the crushing Camaro. We'll do the fast Ferrari. Red Rocket and My Little Racer. So those are our four maximum cars we have. And then we now go to the select venue. And on the select venue, notice now we have actual tracks instead of those pictures that we had before. If we go over to our code, we can click on the venues. Each venue still has what it had before, but now for Mountain Pass, and this is the only one I've done it for here is the actual layout itself. We're going to start with the starting anchor, then the start line itself, a nice long straight, then another straight which has a control point, another very short little straight to kind of get everything all nice and settled. We're going to go into a 90-degree curve, another nice long straight that has a down slope to it. Then we're going to get to the finish line, another final straight, and the ending anchor, which is going to be our little catch box to catch all the cars. So within the JSON file here, I now have a actual layout where I did not have before. And so with all that, I've taken pictures of them. Now, I didn't do Sunny Circuit or Desert Dash. These are just two I kind of threw together last minute to get pictures of. Well, Desert Dash is the one I've been kind of toying around with. Mountain Pass is just a simplified version of it. So we'll select Mountain Pass, and once we select Mountain Pass, we'll go to Race, and now you're going to find out exactly what the race looks like. So what's going to happen is that the track's going to appear, the four cars are going to appear. They will not have the models on them right now. So I apologize for that, but I'm still having some major problems getting that worked out, and I didn't want to delay these videos. We're going to have a little countdown. It's going to flash something on the screen, and then it's going to time it. And then once they pass the finish line, it's going to time their races for all four of the cars. Plus, we got a little bit of sound. So what I want to do here is let me turn it up a little bit so we can hear it. There we go. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear it through this microphone. Most likely you can. So we're going to go back over here. We're going to click on race, and let's see what happens. And there we go. So this is the graphics we're going to be taking a look at today. We're going to be taking, well, not today, but over the next 2, possibly 3 videos, how to draw the ground, how the track's going to get laid out, which I think we kind of covered very briefly in another video, how the cars are going to get constructed. That will be an video all on its own. And then the supporting staff, the little dots that you have up here, with the red lights and the yellow lights and the green lights, how we're going to do the timing and how we do the finish at the finish line, and how all this is constructed up on the screen. So that's what we're going to be going through within the next couple of videos. This is our race screen. This is our race.js file. Now, basically what we have here is that within the pages directory, I have my race page itself. There's my race HTML, which is very, very simple. There's not a whole lot to it there. and this is my race JavaScript file. And then all the rest of these JavaScript files are the supporting files. This one controls all the sounds. This is the racing lights. This does the timing. This does the race results themselves. This generates the layout for the screen. This generates the ground layout, just generates the car render layout. And how all that works is that within the race JavaScript file, which is what's showing up on the screen here, is that when I construct everything, I'm basically going to initialize every one of these classes. Here's all my different game data. This shows me which cars I've selected and which layout I've selected. This is my layout renderer and car renderer, which these are the two things we're going to cover in this particular video. This is, the sounds, the racing lights, the venue, and then I'm going to build the layout with a renderer, build the cars with the render itself, set up my race time, race results, and then I start. And once I start, then we go through the initialization process and initialize everything as we go along here, and that's when we start getting into the actual graphics themselves. So the idea here, first of all, I want to take a look at is on the renderer, the two renderer classes, because those are going to be very, very important. They're responsible for rendering the layout that we have selected and responsible for rendering the cars that we have selected. And that is done here within the layout renderer class and the car renderer class. And so let's take a look at those two. All right, first of all, we're inside the layout renderer class. And it's very, very simple here. The big thing here is that we're going to be able to have to take some sort of track width. And this track width is going to define the width of the track itself. Otherwise, we have what the layout is, the scene is, all that kind of fun stuff. Blah, 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 no big deal here, no big deal here, no big deal here. Build layout's the big deal itself. So the idea here is that we're going to take the JSON file. Let me bring up that JSON file real quick. Okay, on the JSON file, we're going to take a look at we're going to pass it this particular layout. And this layout is an array of each of the different types of tracks we're going to have. Starting anchor, start line, straight. There's another straight. There's another straight. There's a curve. There's a straight. So type is going to be the very important thing here. It's going to take a look at the type, and then based upon the type, it's going to figure out what data do I need to be able to generate the particular track. So that's within the layout generator, and that's within the build layout. And all that is called right here within the race.js within the constructor itself. So once I've set up pretty much set up everything, then I build the layout. And all that's going to do is that's going to take this JSON layout here in the JSON file and convert it over to tracks that can be used in the graphics program themselves. So let's take a look at that. So of course it's just a simple for each. We do the track types. If and then basically it's just simple as, if else, if else, if else, if else, if else, straight out, no big deal there. So if we got a starting anchor here, we got to figure out what the starting position is, starting director, and then we're going to push create start anchor. Now, this track.createStartAnchor, this is a hook into the graphics program that allows me to be able to create all the different types of tracks, whether it is a starting anchor, an ending anchor, straight, curve, start line, or finish line. And that will, by having that track option there, that track class there, which I've already covered in a previous video here, this will convert all the information that I'm passing to it from the regular JSON file into a layout or into a mesh that will then, well, not a mesh, but this will this will allow me to create it to where I now can get ready to be able to convert that into a mesh eventually. So that's all this section does here. Is it goes through each one of these here, goes through, if then, if else, if else, if else, and figures out what it needs to do. That's no big, so it's no big deal there. So that's all, and then we just store that inside layout. So that's all this layout does on the layout renderer. So of course that is called right here. So once that is created, now we have a layout that is ready to be physically created to be put onto the screen itself. And where is that done? That is done through the render method. And this render method here does the actual creation of the UI. And that is done through the starting anchors, the straights, the ending anchors, and the curves. So let's take a quick look at those particular ones. I can't remember if I put those into a previous video or not. Those are all defined within my UI section inside my classes, in which I say, you know, this is all you need to do to be able to define a curve. This is what you need to do to be able to find an ending anchor. This is what you need to do to be able to define a finish line. And in case, you know, and so basically this is what actually creates the Babylon JS code to push everything onto the screen itself. So the idea here is that the finish line, the starting anchor, the starting line, the straight, and all that kind of fun stuff does whatever it needs to do to be able to give me a Babylon JS version of the layout that I have decided to work upon. So if the track happens to be a starting anchor, I'm going to call it starting anchor and save that as a starting anchor, and then push that within the track layout. So what am I actually pushing here? This is the actual render itself. So the starting anchor, when I do a starting anchor on its own, it doesn't actually create it. It just gets everything set up. I don't create anything until I do a render. And that's kind of the nomenclature I've used for a lot of this, is that when I'm actually physically changing something or physically creating something, I'm using the word render. So I don't ever, when I do I never create the new starting anchor or a new straight and it's all ready to go. I render it. And so all this is here is that I have a variable called track layout, which is the physical mesh, Babylon JS mesh that you see up on the screen. And it's real simple. I do the starting anchor, I do the straight, I do the ending anchor, I do a curve, start line, and finish line. And it's all extraordinarily easy and extraordinarily simple. I'm just going through my layout itself. I'm going through the layout, and once I go through the layout for each one of the individual tracks, then I am going to create the mesh, and that mesh will be saved within track layout. So that ends up basically having two different variables holding off to the layout in layout renderer. The first one is the layout itself, and the layout itself is the definition of all the different tracks that are involved with the layout. That's it. And it's very generic there. So in case we happen to go to another graphics engine, we can still keep this tracks because it's completely independent upon whether you're using a particular graphics engine or not. Track layout, however, contains the physical manifestation of these tracks that you see up on the screen. And this is where, if we're using Babylon JS, we would use Babylon JS. If we're using 3JS, we'll use 3JS. But this contains the physical manifestation of that track that we see up on the screen. Next thing we do is boxes. This is within the render, is that once we create the particular track here, the next thing we actually do is we then do the physics for each of these pieces of layouts, because it's not only nothing within Babylon JS. Not only do we have to actually draw it, we have to tell it how it's going to interact with the environment. For instance, a massive zero, like a ground or a track, would be a ground. You know, it would have no interaction with anything else except for doing collisions, while something like a car will have a certain mass to it, and so therefore it will, be affected by the gravity. And so all this does right here is it goes back through the track layout one more time, and it does the physics for us automatically. And I'm not going to go through the physics. I may spend the whole video on just doing the physics. In fact, I probably will end up doing that when I do the card thing, because it is a monster to try to figure out how it's going on. I'm sorry to admit, it's been something very strange, and I've even gone to the chat bots to ask me, hey, can you help me with this? And they're kind of going, nope, you're kind of on your own. They really haven't helped me much with anything with that, with one exception, which that we'll get to. But I've gone through a lot with the layout renderer there to show you exactly what we do with the layout, how the layout renders. So once we go and once we build the layout here for the layout renderer, and once we initialize everything, and where is it? And we do the rendering here, that physically puts it up on the screen. And the car renderer works the exact same way. So if we go up now to the car renderer section, And I'm sorry, I meant to do this so you can see a little bit more on the screen. Car render does the exact same thing. The idea here is within the race is that on the constructor, on the car renderer, we're going to tell it to build out the cars. This will go and get our game data selected cars. These are the cars that we have selected and the starting position. And that's very important because we've got to be able to put them into the start line correctly. So the starting position tells us where the start line is going to be. And the car renderer. So build cars is extraordinarily easy. We go to the car database, we get the ID, and we push the actual car data themselves. And this is going to be the data that we have stored with the cars, the JPEGs, the model IDs, all that kind of fun stuff. Again, nothing's been rendered as of yet. That's a whole another story. So once we build that, the car render is no big deal. Then we come into the initialization section. After we have done the layout render, we now render the car renderer. So the car render does the rendering section, which is the part which is actually physically, again, does the cars themselves. Group index is something within the physics that allows us to say, you don't have to, when one mesh hits with another mesh, if they're in the same group, then they don't collide with each other. But if they're different groups, they do collide with each other. And we just go through all the different cars. We set up a position, and their initial position is going to be relative to where the starting position is, which gives them relative to the starting line. And then we create the new car. And that's pretty much it. I will have a video specifically generated that is specific just for the car, so we're not going to go through this itself. We create a new card, we build the car itself, and then we push the rendered cars. We're going to create a variable called rendered cars, which is the physical manifestation of that car in Babylon.js, and we're also going to push the chassis. And what's going to be important for that? Well, that's what's going to eventually tell us where the finish line is going to occur. So, when they cross the finish line, I need to know what meshes to be able to take a look at to know when they cross the finish line. And I've chosen for now the chassis. Once we get the models ready to go, we'll choose a bunch of different ones within the models so that any part of them could be able to get through the finish line correctly. So that is no big deal, but that's really all there is to it. So rendered cars is going to, for instance, cars is going to be the variable that's going to contain just the raw data for the cars, just like the layout contained the raw data for the layouts. Rendered cars is going to contain the raw data for the cars that prepares it for Babylon.js. So that's what happens at this point. Then once, of course, we get to the render section of the race.js, then that's where everything appears on the screen, and it just go in, and the game does it from there, or Babylon.js does it from there. I don't do much of anything else. But for this particular video, that's how we get the layouts, and that's how we get the cars up on the screen. For our next video, we're going to take it one step at a time and actually start pushing things like the ground, the layout, the cars, and physically take a look at them on the screen. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel to view more videos. Click on the like button on this video and visit us at TheVirtuoid.com. Also, support us on Patreon, where you can get access to member-only videos. Links are down below. Again, thank you very much for watching, and keep on coding.